and welcome everyone. We couldn't have a celebration without starting with the bagpipes, so thank you, Jeff, for joining us today. Our family would like to welcome everybody here today to remember and celebrate the life of Vincent Gibson, best known to me as Papa Gib. He always wanted this service to be held here. For many, many years, he spent his Tuesdays coming here. He would help with the mechanical restoration of the old fire engines, something he was very proud of. He enjoyed the friendships with the men, the coffee breaks, and the camaraderie. We are going to take you on a little walk through memory lane, through Gib's life. I'd like to ask my daughters, Indy and Amani, and my nephew Hunter to read Psalm 23, and following them, Ted Karaluk, a firefighter and friend, will come up here to share some memories.
Psalm 23, a psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures, he leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies.
You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you all for joining us here today. My first encounter with Vince was in 1975. That was the year I was hired on the Winnipeg Fire Department. And my first posting was number 6 station at Burroughs and Aikens. As some of you may know, a posting meant that someone had to be transferred out when someone got transferred in. And Vince was that someone. He was transferred to the South End 23 station, which was a good thing for them because he lived pretty close to that area. My first few days were marked with hearing many conversations that the fact that Vince's new station was the benefactor of him being there, and it was kind of the loss of number 6. But I knew I had my work cut out for me, as I hoped to aspire to the shoes of the person that I had replaced. It wasn't until a few months later that Vince had returned to 6 to be an officer on the rescue in that station. Then I realized what all my workmates were referring to. Vince was a gentleman to the core, and he was always thinking of others, very soft-spoken, and always thinking of his crew and the safety of his crew. Our paths crossed numerous times over our careers, but it wasn't until Vince joined us at the museum here that we realized of what an asset he was to the society. His mechanical knowledge is certainly missed, not to mention his continual willingness to help, regardless of the task, such as when number 6 station closed and we started dismantling parts of the tin ceiling of that. I think Lil remembers that very well, because he came home as dark as the tires. His face was probably unrecognizable, but we salvaged him, and he was always helping. And yes, I'm not sure if those clothes were ever washed or thrown out, because either way, it was, in any event, this was just Vince. He's always willing to help regardless of the task. And Vince was a wealth of knowledge for many things. He was a wonderful and caring person from the inside out. This was evident during some of our conversations at our visits at the St. Boniface Hospital during some of his procedures. I remember his smile when he spoke of his children and grandchildren. And his pride and love of the fire department and all the brothers and sisters that he worked with. The love for the fire apparatus is evident, and the love for the society. One of my own personal memories that we had was during one of our Festival of Lights parade, where we had actually that machine right there, Pumper 9, was decorated with probably, I don't know, 10,000 lights, Terry. You know, it was lit up like better than a Christmas tree. And the society always led the way for the apparatus in the Santa Claus Parade or Festival of Lights Parade, whatever it was called. And it was right after 9/11. And there was a little bit of snow falling. It was just the thick flakes. And as we were driving down Portage Avenue, they had the gallery of people around. Well, we had a standing ovation where the whole crowd just stood beside us. I think Vince and I both had a tear in our eyes when we drove by, but it was very, very heart-wrenching. But his memory will always stay within these walls of all the efforts and stuff that he's put in. So, thank you. Very well.
Thank you so much, Ted, for those beautiful words. Sorry, can you guys all hear me? It's really nice to hear some stories about Papa that I might have not heard before, like the one of the parade and getting standing ovation. I'm Abby. I'm the youngest grandchild. I had to ask Amanda that before I got up here because I forgot. I got nervous. And so I'm just going to read a few memories from the Jacobson crew in Arburg. There are many fond memories of Gibby by the Jacobson cousins out in Arburg, whether they are socializing, lending a helping hand, or taking trips with Lil and Gib. Gibby constantly had a kind and gentle way about him to make a person feel heard and noticed. There was always a big-hearted welcome at Gibby's Corner where anyone could stop by for local gossip, meet the relatives, and of course have a beverage or two. After Vince's retirement from being a fireman, he ventured to help out on the Jacobson farm, trying his hand at the new technology-driven machinery. One of his favorite times, like any farmer, was harvest time, as Gib, Robert, and Leslie would be all combining on the same field. Every time that they met each other, they would tip their hats, as if to say everything's okay. When Gib first came out to help, Les told him there's only 2 rules. Rule number 1 was, don't forget your lunchbox. Rule number 2 was, don't forget rule number 1. This was because Dolores and Carol packed the best lunches, and you wouldn't want to miss out on that. Robert enjoyed playing a hand or two of cribbage with Gib after lunch to let it settle a bit. Robert could not believe how lucky Gib was that he won most of the time, but they enjoyed a little downtime reminiscing about stories gone by. Gib was willing to do anything around the machinery, but his head seemed to be accident-prone and would have scars to prove it. As he was offered a hard hat to prevent some of those bumps, Gib flatly declined, saying he had worn too many of those in the past and let the bumps continue. All the hard work Gib did was greatly appreciated more than he knew by Robert and Leslie. It was always with a kind smile and a twinkle in those eyes that Gib was usually seen and not heard. He helped anyone in need, and it was always so nice to see Lil and Gib at every family function, genuinely interested in how everyone else was and how everyone was doing. He will always be fondly remembered in our hearts forever.
Papa Gib loved babies, which is really lucky for my sister and I because between the 2 of us, we have 9 children. He loved to make funny faces and to make them smile. When my oldest daughter, Indy, was a baby, her and I spent a lot of time out at the cabin with Papa. When she got fussy, he would dip his finger in whiskey and try to convince me to let him rub it on her gums because it would help both of us sleep better. One day, him and Amma came down to Finn's, which is one of the beaches that we fish off of, to surprise my husband Jesse, my kids, and I there. For years now, we have been skunked. We haven't caught a thing there. But that day, Papa was catching them, left, right, and center. And his joy and excitement is something that I will never forget. My kids and I, we loved stopping by Tulane Bay to visit Amma and Papa. One night, before my grandpa went in for his surgery, we brought over pizza. And we started watching a movie about that big dog, Beethoven. We never got a chance to finish the movie. In fact, we still haven't. But it is a core memory for my kids and I, and it is an evening with them that we will never forget.
Papa Gib had a few sayings that always stick out. One of them being, boy, oh boy. It was something he would say when one of us or one of the grandkids were doing something that he thought perhaps we should be in trouble for. Papa had a twinkle in his eye, and sometimes when he would say, boy, oh boy, if you looked at him, he would smile and wink. He was always someone you could count on to help when you were stuck. In high school, I'd walk over during spares or for lunch, and he would always drive me back or give me the greatest smile before I got out of the car. There are a few times he rescued me from being stuck in the snow. I always had this horrible habit of forgetting to shut the lights off in the car. And Papa would always come to my rescue, no matter what time of day or where I was. And it was usually right after my 9 p.m. finishing university class. Usually I was greeted with a, boy, oh boy, Katie, you've done it again, followed by his amazing smile. Papa and I used to sit on the porch at the cabin and drink coffee in the mornings and birdwatch. He hated those pesky squirrels when they would come out and eat all the bird food. He loved watching the kids play and see what made them tick, and then would bug them about it. Papa and I had a special bond, and somehow I couldn't do any wrong. Things I would normally get in trouble for, he would pat me on the back and say, it's gonna be okay, kiddo. Papa loved sharing stories from different calls when he was a firefighter. Some were traumatic, and others you felt proud that Papa was able to save someone. One of the last times I was with Papa without a window between us, he met my youngest son. He was so proud to hold him and promptly laid down on the couch to nap with him. They had an amazing cuddle, and it's always going to be a favorite memory.
As my sisters shared, Papa was always available to you got me. Papa was always available at the drop of the dime to boost our car, to drive us anywhere we needed. Even though university was a 10-minute walk from their place, he'd be up in the mornings happily there to drive me door-to-door service and pick me up late at night. In addition, Papa would drive us to the airport, to sporting events, and sharing me stories of his life and how he got to deliver 1 or 2 babies and rescue a few cats. Amma and Papa took us, my cousins, my sisters and I, to Austin, Manitoba for the Austin Rodeo. Papa was always so happy to be there and watching us enjoy what he enjoyed. Most mornings, if you woke up early enough, you'd catch Papa playing several rounds of solitaire. This was a constant you could always count on. One of my favorite memories of Papa as a child was when he was chief. He'd always stop by our house and say hi and share in the heroic feat that his team had completed. He was so proud of being a firefighter and proud of his company. I was always so proud of Papa, seeing him in his firefighter chief attire. In Papa's last years of life, he would go through frescas so fast, I could not even look at a fresca without seeing Papa. His gentle smile and gratitude as you'd crack that fresca open.
I remember Papa being a cautious driver. You could say that he took the phrase, slow and steady wins the race, to heart. There was one time I got to drive out to the cabin and it was just the two of us, and he had Western music playing just loud enough that you could tell something was on the radio. And I guess you could say he tested my patience as a 11-year-old child, because we watched every single car pass us on Highway 8, and all I wanted to do was get out to the cabin. But needless to say, he got us there safe and sound. One of my other favorite childhood memories of going back and forth from the cabin was driving with Amma and Papa. And guaranteed on the way home, they would for sure stop somewhere along the highway to give you a treat. And yeah, I just love that. And Papa loved peanuts. And if you could never think of something to get him for Christmas, if you got him a jar of salted peanuts, you knew he'd be happy. He also loved shrimp rings, and if positioned in front of him, it was guaranteed that half of that ring would be gone within seconds. I could always count on Papa to be at my ringette games, cheering me on, and when I was on the ice, I would love looking up to see him and Amma in the stands. If we needed a ride, he was always there to give me one. Whether the game or practice was at 7 a.m., you could guarantee he'd be there early with a smile on his face. During one of Papa's last visits in the hospital, my partner Brock and I went to visit him and say goodbye before we made the trek. Back to BC. And Brock, Papa had only met him a few times. And Brock went to give him a hug, and Papa had no recollection of who he was and kind of did one of these. But still gave him a hug, and we had a really good giggle afterwards all together. It was so funny. I'm just really grateful to be his grandchild and for all of our memories.
We have been blessed by Papa's spirit since his passing. During his time in the personal care home, there was always a bunny outside of his window. It was there the day he passed, and his spirit animal has blessed us several times since when we reminisce about him. Even this morning, as we were preparing, there was a little bunny outside underneath the fire truck. For all of you who have known Papa, he was a good man, filled with pride. We all just want to thank you and are blessed for each of you who have had the opportunity to know Papa and with extension be in our lives.
My turn. Hi, I'm Ingrid, in case any of you don't know who I am. I'm here to share a few memories and lessons I learned from my dad. Always cry on the first spanking. Don't turn around and say, that didn't hurt. When Dad says, I'm going to see a man about a horse, that doesn't mean we're getting a new pet. Pigs don't fly. Going to Alaska, the rugged wilderness holds much more beauty than as much or more beauty than the magic of Disneyland. Dad always taught us to love nature and the simple things in life. Sorry, that was difficult. Once when I was grounded, Dad decided to take me to a movie, just the two of us. What he didn't realize was that there was a lot of suggestive parts in that movie. I know he must have been as uncomfortable as I was that day. We never discussed the movie after, but even though I was in trouble, he still made me feel special. Dad worked hard. Beside the fire hall, he also worked for Adco Trailers. He He drove street sweepers home from Chicago. That's a very slow drive. Delivered telephone books and samples for years. All of those extra jobs allowed our family to enjoy so many adventures. I remember while doing telephone books, Dad always had one arm darker than the other because it was always out the window. He taught us hard work pays off. Never be afraid to do more than you think you can. There is always room for more. Many times going to the cabin way back when, the 5 of us would get into the single cab truck with Smoocher, our dog, and a box filled with 12 goslings. Tight quarters to say the least, and none of us complained too badly. Dad was the original Google Maps. If anyone needed to get directions or the quickest route, he was our go-to guy. As a matter of fact, he even created his own map. With all the hits and the bumps on his head, by the end, he had the map of the world on the top of that bald head. Dad wasn't afraid to try anything. He was a well-rounded man that had so much knowledge from woodworking, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, tin bashing, farming. He could pretty much do anything that he put his mind to. It may have not always been the best finish or the prettiest job, but it was made to last and it was done well. He was an asset to any project that came up, whether it was solicited or one on his own. Dad taught me when you're determined, you can do anything and make things happen. Dad lost his license following his surgery. When Mom lost hers as well, he was determined to get his license back and drive again. To all of our surprise, all he needed to do was fill out paperwork. And voila, he had his license again. He promised me he would only drive in the neighborhood to get milk and bread. That worked great until Rick and I went on holidays. And a few days after we had gone, home care called me stating Mom and Dad had gone missing. We can't find them. Bonnie and Clyde had disappeared. Alarmed to say the least, I made some frantic phone calls, close to sending out a search party, but to no one's surprise, they had a fantastic day at Club Regent Casino. They did this often, that loving and embracing their freedom. Those two were rebels right to the bitter end. When Dad officially couldn't drive anymore, the casino was a frequent excursion we all enjoyed. Dad was a quiet guy, strong in conviction and discipline. He taught us to work hard, to behave, yet gave us freedom to grow and have fun. In the past few years, I've spent a lot of time with him. The tables turned a bit. I became his driver, a co-decision maker, the one who held his hand when Mom couldn't be there. I will always cherish the time with him, the stories we shared, and listening to him reminisce, to watch him enjoy my family. His love for Mom never once wavered, nor did that for his family. He will always be in my heart and a good part of who I am.
I'm reading on behalf of Uncle Bill, who was Papa's younger brother. A few words to reminisce. There were 3 years between Vince and I, and, like most brothers, we had our individual interests and pursuits, but enjoyed memorable family times together. I remember during the big flood of 1950, when we were shipped off to our grandparents' farm and attended school there for a few months. No doubt a difficult time for the parents, but an adventure for two young boys. Like most siblings, we had our moments of squabbling and wrestling, and this was proven true when during one of our dust-ups, Vincent goaded me till I kicked him and my shoe crashed into the china cabinet. Some aunts were visiting at the time, and the crash shocked everyone, stopped the fight, and gave everyone a laugh. We too got off scot-free that time. On a trip to the West Coast in 1948, Dad had a 1935 Dodge, which had no trunk. I imagine this was quite handy, as Mom and Dad stacked the luggage between us boys, therefore ensuring safe baggage and two boys nicely separated. We shared lots of holiday visiting with a number of cousins, uncles, and aunts from both sides of the family. There were many family get-togethers at the cottage in Grand Marais or at the farm. We were best men at each other's weddings. With the addition of wives and families, our lives took off in different directions. My line of work took us to Montreal, and I had to go ahead, leaving Rita alone with a baby in her parents' home as they were in the UK at the time. One night, she became very nervous when she thought she heard noises in the basement. In a panic, she phoned Lil, and in no time, Vincent turned up to check out the house for her. He stayed and talked for ages till he was sure she was okay. That kind of thoughtfulness was part of who Vincent was. Even though there were miles between us, we still managed time together with all 6 kids either at Granny and Grandpa's house, at the cottage as it expanded and grew over the years, on Hecla Island, hunting for fossils, Gimli, or Montreal. On one of their visits to Montreal, I warned Vincent about hitting Toronto at rush hour on their way home. I'm not sure how it happened, but sure enough, it took 3 or more hours to get across the city. It was anything but a pleasant drive, and he was not a happy camper. We heard the whole story when he got home. When we visited Winnipeg, Lil and Rita did their own thing, and Vincent and I would disappear to our male haunts, such as Princess Auto or the Fire Museum. One of those times at the museum, we were working on an old truck for ages and finally got it started, making so much smoke the fire alarm went off. Then a fire department truck arrived. We all had red faces that day and a good few chuckles. As the kids married, we became empty nesters. We managed a few more trips together as a foursome around Montreal, Ottawa, the Oregon coast, Vancouver Island, Arizona. All fine times together when we just enjoyed the traveling and each other's company with food, drink, laughter, and conversation. Vincent was a good brother, dependable and constant. And while he's missed terribly, we're comforted that he's in a better place and has no more pain. Rest in peace, big brother. We love you. Bill and Rita.
Patience is not the ability to wait, but the ability to keep a good attitude while waiting. As identified by my mother-in-law, Pat Shepard, this strongly emphasized Papa Gibbs' quiet, loving way and patience during functions. Papa was always the man in the background, ever waiting for Amma to finish up. And Papa was and still is the wind beneath Amma's wings. My mom and I now have the pleasure of sharing a few of Amma's fondest memories of Papa throughout their life together. This is all in Amma's words. I moved to Winnipeg when I was 12 and went to Bishop Grandin School in Fort Garry. Gib and I were in the same class. I really started to notice him when we were about 14 or 15, when he started getting a little taller, sitting closer, and sharing lunches with me. His mom made bountiful lunches.
He was a very shy guy who would have preferred to be at the stable down the street with the horses than at school. He worked at the stables before school most mornings. Then he would show up at school. He brought the stable with him. Boots up on the desk, manure still in the soles, the smell of the horses lingering on his clothes. A smell we didn't want to share, and it didn't bother him in the least. He thought it was funny, and he knew it annoyed some girls. Margaret Waldner will remember this well.
Gibb started asking me to go to the matinee movies at Grant Park Theater. It was 35 cents to get in. It always needed to be a Western movie. But when he asked me to the KC shows, the amusement rides, and paid my way, I knew things with Gibb were changing and getting more serious. This was our first real date. Brother Bill saw us on the Ferris wheel that day, and that's how news got around that Gibb had a girlfriend.
When I turned sweet 16, Gibb borrowed his mom's credit card and went to Eaton's. He bought a silver mirror and brush set and had it engraved with my name. Gibb's mother was so angry when she saw the bill and how much Gibb had paid for it. Gibb had to pay back every cent, and she never let him forget. This was one of my most cherished gifts from Gibb. I have passed it on to Abby, our granddaughter, whose middle name is Lillian.
I remember when Gibb and his family would go by streetcar to Eaton's to do their family shopping. It was a big excursion that I thought was so exciting. Not everyone got to do this. The streetcar would stop in front of their house at University Crescent. The family would also take the train to Grand Beach to visit relatives and spend time out at Grand Marais.
Gibb started hanging out with my brother Mickey and Dennis Peters, the mechanics. They would fill their time taking apart cars. There were car parts all over the place. Cash Auto became a favorite hangout. This was the beginning of a lifelong passion for Gibb.
Gibb's father, Charlie, would cut flowers from their yard for Gibb to bring to me. Gibb was teased a lot by my brother Mickey and his friends for the sweet jester, but this never stopped him from bringing a bouquet.
Gibb wore a bomber jacket all the time. Never a parka, never a sweater. I'm sure he froze often in the winter, but he was as stubborn as he was sweet.
He would ride his bike when he could, and the rest of the time walk to my house. It was a long walk between University Crescent and Holly Avenue.
Gibb asked me once to marry him when I was 18. I said, nope, we're too young and not ready for marriage. Disappointed, he said he'd wait till I was ready. At 21, when our friends were getting married, Gibb said, Lil, now it's time. How often have we heard that in his lifetime? And I agreed happily. We were married October 1956 for 64 wonderful years.
In our early married life, Gibb would walk to his job at Russell Motors. We lived on Wolseley Avenue in an apartment, later on Clarence Avenue, and finally on Tulane Bay. We liked to go fishing, camping, and horseback riding. Gibb was a very great horseman. Me, not so much. We always loved to drive in the country, and we would go to country fairs, especially to listen to country and fiddle music.
Gibb once worked as a cooper for CP Rail. He enjoyed it, but then there was a strike and he lost his job. When one of my coworkers at the Hudson's Bay switchboard heard this news, she told me her husband bowled with the chief of the fire department. Right? A few days later, she said Gibb had an interview with Chief Dunnett. During this interview, Gib was asked to spell one word, to which the chief responded, "You spelt it wrong, but I'll give you the job anyways, pending you pass the physical." Gib went for a physical and was told he was too skinny and should bulk up on water and bananas and come back in a week. In a week he returned, and at that time, heavier. He was welcomed as a member of the Winnipeg Fire Department to report to training, a career he loved entirely until he retired. Badge number 450.
When we became parents, Gib was a strict father, but he loved our 3 kids dearly. He always wanted the kids to experience the world around them. That sparked our wishes to travel and see Canada and into the States. We started small, camping in a tent. At Nunavik Lake, we ended up with a skunk in the tent and wouldn't leave. So we had to drive home that night with 3 screaming kids. When we came back the next day, the skunk had gone without spraying, and we enjoyed the rest of the weekend. After our encounter with the skunk, we bought an old trailer, camping in many places until we ended up at Spruce Sands by the lake. We all know how that turns out. Gibby's Corner, everyone's favorite spot.
Gib followed me around while I played baseball. He was a positive critic and an avid fan. He came to concerts while I was in the Heather Bell Pipe Band. He was a good Scot and he enjoyed the music. He was my biggest supporter. Gib volunteered many times. He was a driver who would pick up people with muscular dystrophy and drive them to the Hudson's Bay Santa party. He also started fixing dolls and toys, even sewing clothes for dolls so they would be given as gifts. As a matter of fact, he loved the sewing machine so much, he sewed all of our tea towels together and the kids' diapers because they thought they were too small. He wanted them bigger.
Often, he was voluntold by me. He usually accepted easily, mostly willing and happy to help out, from the community barbecues to Girl Guides to sporting teams. He was a ringette dad to many of the ringette girls. He was known to start up the snowblower and head off to clear many sidewalks and driveways after snowfalls.
Gib with Dr. Dale, son Jonathan, and a couple of extra guys flew up north to Red Sucker Lake and the Stoll River and realized a dream. Together, they built a hand-hewn log cabin from scratch. It took them a couple of months to complete and lots of hard work. It is an incredible story and a hunting cabin enjoyed for a few years until somebody burnt it down.
When Gib wasn't camping at the log cabin, he could always be found at Gibby's Corner or Reg's cabin with a drink in his hand, enjoying time with the boys, Reg, Earl, and lots of BS stories. In later years, at Gibby's Corner with Gibby's gang and Stan's clan, he would never hesitate when Wes or Rick or one of the Barts would ask him to go hunting. He had a keen eye to spot deer.
When the grandkids came along, he enjoyed the girls thoroughly. We would bring them to the cabin, then take them to the Austin Fair and various camping trips around Manitoba. Also, we took Chris and Jen to the West Coast one year.
After retirement, Gib found a new happy place on a tractor in the fields in Arborg. He loved his early morning drives to Arborg, spotting animals along the way. He never tired of working on a tractor, driving one through the fields, or hanging out with Les, Robert, and their families. He worked out there until a day before his surgery 7 years ago. Some of our highlights of our life: driving from Winnipeg to Dawson City, Yukon, and then down to Tijuana, Mexico.
Flying to Laughlin, Nevada, where we got on the boat on the Colorado River. Gib and Mickey were so distracted, those were the drivers, that we hit a sandbar. Gib had to, and everybody knows how Dad liked to wear pants. Gib had to jump in the water in his underwear and push the pontoon boat off the sandbar so we could continue.
Gib riding an Icelandic horse through the countryside in the volcanic areas of Iceland.
After 50 years, Bill, Gib, Rita, and I spent a very special Christmas and New Year's together on Vancouver Island.
Heading north to Alaska was such a favorite location. We went that way 4 times. We didn't strike rich with gold, but we tried to find that big nugget.
After Gib's surgery, and when he was stronger, we made a big trip to Ontario for Danielle and Eric's wedding. Once again, a nice reunion with Brother Bill and his family.
We would head to the casino any chance we could and make it to Gibby's Corner for short stays.
Gib always enjoyed visits with friends, relatives, and neighbors reminiscing about the past. The beer and burger visits with Ron and Bill were always a treat that he looked forward to.
He appreciated visits from his fireman friends when in the hospital and looked forward to the retiree monthly breakfast with them.
He loved to watch the great grandkids to try to make them smile. He loved their giggles.
Gib always looked forward to Saturday night polka parties on the radio. Good old fiddle music.
As Gib's health declined, as in the rest of his life, he never complained and took each day with grace and appreciation.
Gib was always at my side throughout life. He now sits behind me on the mantle at Ingrid's.
Now it's my time to watch over him. We're going to watch a video now that we have together.
Boy, oh boy, were we ever lucky to have known that man. It's been over 2 years since Papa left us, and he touched our lives, each and every one of us, in one way or another. He will forever be in our hearts. Thank you all for coming today to celebrate his life. Please join us for a light lunch and a chance to look around at one of Papa's favorite spots. I know, we all know, that he would be so happy that you're here today. Thank you.